Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. And what an amazing week it is turning out to be for the cause we care so much about, 9/11 Truth. If you've been following our bulletins, and dear God, you should be, Tucker Carlson, former Fox News host, big-time internet sensation podcaster, interviewed former Congressman Curt Weldon. Among the things discussed, the whole topic of the conversation was 9/11, of course, and various aspects of it, but among the things discussed was the presidential commission that the former congressman is pursuing. And at one point during that interview, he held up the document you see right there over my shoulder, Presidential Commission on 9/11. So many people in the 9/11 Truth movement worked hard to put that together, and that is going to be delivered to President Donald J. Trump. So very exciting time here in the 9/11 Truth movement, and we're going to be bringing on the founder of AE 9/11 Truth, now independent at Richard Gage 911. That's Richard Gage, and also our chairman Kamal Obeid. But first, let me bring in Mr. Craig McKee here. He is the new co-host of 9/11 Freefall. And Craig, we had Curt Weldon on Tucker Carlson. You're the representative of the media here on the show with your 8 provincial awards and such. So give us your take, your impressions after watching that interview.
Well, I guess there's my impressions of the interview, and then there's my impressions of the reaction to the interview, which are both kind of exciting. What I liked about the interview is that a decent amount of time was given to the evidence that Curt Weldon himself admits he's not the most expert on, which is the controlled demolition, World Trade Center evidence. So to watch him introduce that and him to talk about he referred to the more than 3,000 architects and engineers who are behind who are questioning this and want a new investigation. It's just great, and it really does make a difference when you get somebody that is kind of an insider or was an insider in one way or another. I know he doesn't feel like an insider because of some of the things that were done to him to silence him, but he clearly, being a former congressman, he's a name that it's hard for us to match someone of that stature in terms of profile. So getting him on Tucker Carlson is huge, and he just represented the evidence to the extent he was able to, and I think it was enough, because he just made the point. And I believe Tucker agreed with him that buildings, particularly ones that are not hit by planes, but any buildings cannot just come down because of fires and because of plane impacts. It just can't happen. And Building 7 in particular, I think, is the one that's making people sit up and take notice, because the fact that it wasn't hit by a plane makes it even more obvious to people that are just kind of hearing about this for the first time. So pretty awesome, I would say. Pretty awesome.
I remember during the C-SPAN campaign when we were calling that Washington Journal program every morning, sticking a Building 7 question in there. If a congressperson or even former member or anybody related to a member of Congress said anything slightly positive, like, I'll take your information, I'll look at it, maybe, we would celebrate. High fives all around, scramble, get the story out. Such and such congressperson said that they would take our information. That's where we were back in 2012, 2013. Somebody said something slightly positive. Now we have a former member of Congress, person on the Armed Services Committee, saying that 9/11 is a sham, calling the deep state scumbags here on, which, our audience knows that. We try to use professional language when we're presenting it, but Curt Weldon doesn't care, because he was right there at the apex of where all of this happens, interacting with the deep state people, the intelligence people, and he knows, and he does not care. He is angry. He knows that we were lied to about September 11th, and he wants to get justice for it. And it's amazing all of the coverage that we are enjoying right now. There's a member of our team who signed up for email alerts from Google. And whenever something about Weldon comes up, 9/11, 9/11 truth, I don't know what all the search words are, she gets an alert right to her inbox. I woke up the next morning, I think it was after this interview or 2 days after, it was early in the morning, and my inbox is blown up. She forwarded all of them to me, and I sent them to you, and you wrote that fantastic article covering that. Now we got to talk about it here on video. People like Russell Brand is talking about this, and I'm not super familiar with Russell Brand, but I've heard the name, right? So that must mean he's pretty famous. Mainstream media, some mainstream media, not the big ones, but the ones that are allowed to talk about this.
Yeah, it's kind of like we haven't quite succeeded in penetrating the real establishment media, the CNNs and the NBCs and all these people. They're ignoring the interview so far, as far as I know, anyway. The coverage that it's gotten, there are different publications: 21st Century Wire, The New American, RT. There are an assortment of websites that are carrying articles on the subject, and some of them talk, in more than a little bit about controlled demolition. But the Russell Brand, first time I saw Russell Brand, he was playing a rock star in Get Him to the Greek with Jonah Hill, which is a pretty funny movie. So he was he was known as a comedian and an actor, which he still is, before he started doing his own podcast. But now he's got close to 7 million subscribers. I guess they call it on Rumble. So I guess they call it followers on Rumble. But yeah, so he's got an enormous audience, and he has a very comedic way of delivering his opinion, but he's super intelligent, and he's kind of more on the progressive side. And then the other one that I've sort of focused on in that article is Benny Johnson. I don't know how many people would know him, but he's also got over 3 million subscribers, and he's more on the conservative side, but he was taking all the 9/11 stuff very, very seriously, and both of them did. In fact, the Russell Brand video about the Weldon interview put Building 7 right in the title of the video. So even though Weldon talked a lot about intelligence, the intelligence issues, his own experience, and his own problems being targeted by the government, Russell Brand focused on Building 7. So that was pretty interesting. And the Benny Johnson one went through a lot of 9/11 stuff, and even kind of a little segment on the Pentagon, which I know is not our area at AE, but it's part of 9/11, and it's interesting that that came up in both of these, even though Weldon didn't talk about that. So it just goes to show that things they start to take on a life of their own. Once you kind of open the door a crack, then questions start more and more, and then the more questions that are asked and the more people that are looking at it, the more attention it gets. So that's kind of what we're hoping will happen. It's sort of a domino effect, and I think we've seen a start to that. But right now, it's kind of the alternative, the very popular, but still kind of alternative-ish, if that's a word, media and podcasters that are covering it. But we saw during the last election campaign how important podcasters were to reaching the public. So it's not the same as the media landscape as it used to be.
Well, the corporate media is busy covering Katy Perry and a bunch of women going up into outer space. So, that's super important. That is that's something more important than 9/11 being an inside job. I say facetiously. But yeah, absolutely amazing. And what we've done here, I'm going to go ahead and just give our audience about a 3-minute preview of the coverage that we have gotten on this important, critical interview. And when they come back, we'll be joined by our guests.
We recorded the interview you're about to watch 5 days ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since. It's with a former congressman from Pennsylvania called Curt Weldon. Curt Weldon was a very significant figure in Washington 20 years ago. He was not some obscure backbencher. He was one of the most powerful Republicans in the Congress, about to take over the Armed Services Committee, until he asked questions about the official story on 9/11.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. Touchy subject matter today. What really happened on September 11th?
9/11 was, of course, an epochal moment. It was the first time since Pearl Harbor that America was attacked on her homeland.
Because that's what America needs to hear. They need members of Congress who don't become duped by scumbags in the intelligence agency making money for themselves. And you know what, Tucker? I challenge them. I'll name them and I'll give their dollar amounts.
What's the point? The point is that there's an untold story here. And it's not time for crackpots, and it's certainly not time for people who didn't experience these things firsthand, right? I wasn't in DC or New York at this time. I was safely in my little classroom in Iowa. But there is someone who was physically there in DC, and somebody who was a very prominent member of Congress, who was set to be the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, arguably the most powerful committee in Congress. And this individual spoke to Tucker Carlson recently.
The firefighters are always a scapegoat. That's why, Tucker, I'm done with this. If it's the last thing I do, firefighters are not going to be taken for granted anymore. We're going to rise up. We're going to shake the country to its roots. So, firefighters are not second-class citizens.
Well, they certainly shouldn't be.
But if they talk, they'll get sidelined. They'll be called crazies. Even though they heard explosions, they can't be allowed to say that.
They heard explosions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's on tape.
The firefighters, whether we're in the UK or the USA, are, I say, paragons of first responders. 9/11 and the fall of those towers was an event of biblical proportions.
There's no way those two buildings could have collapsed into what they were there. Something had to happen.
The indication that there were dark powers behind it, that possibly global institutions and powers benefited from it. The fact that American people have been lied to, that there has been pageantry and award ceremonies honouring and vigils that have taken place, all of which have by default been duplicitous because the truth is not yet being shared. Does that terrify and concern you?
A new presidential commission. There was no presidential commission before. This would be the first presidential commission.
And can you find any hope in this weird overwhelm, this tidal wave of information that all of us are invited to live within now, is the possibility that we might somehow, like a drowning man, experience an epiphany just before we take our last breath, just before we expire? Is some deeper truth becoming revealed to us?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we are joined by our guests tonight. They need no introduction, very familiar to the 9/11 Truth Movement. We see Richard Gage, AIA. He's the founder of AE 9/11 Truth, working independently now at richardgage911.org. He's an architect of 30 years from the San Francisco Bay Area. He's a member of the American Institute of Architects, and he has been all over. God, has it been the country, the world, Richard? I know you've been a lot of places.
Yeah, 24 countries and 100 American cities.
All right. Well, I think a lot of people have this gentleman to thank right here in the top right for coming to this cause, including me and probably our other guests as well. So thanks for joining us again here on Freefall, Richard. And he's joined by the chairman of AE 9/11 Truth, Kamal Obeid, who holds a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of California, Berkeley. I've been a practicing civil and structural engineer in the San Francisco Bay Area since 1980 and a licensed structural engineer since 1985. So just an amazing week to get back together with the squad, not just here on the screen, but of course, all throughout the 9/11 Truth Movement. This has been a collective effort. We are seeing the fruits of our labor start to sprout, I guess you could say. Let's start with Richard. I want to get your reaction to the Weldon interview on Tucker and the reaction of the attention that it is getting.
Pretty darn exciting, Andy. We've been not waiting because we've been working our tails off for 20 years almost, trying to get to this point. I thought it might be 6 months, before everybody saw the evidence and went, oh my God, let's take these guys down. But good news moves slowly. The truth works its way up. And here we have Tucker Carlson interviewing Curt Weldon as a result of Curt Weldon becoming aware of an article that Raul Angulo, firefighter captain from Seattle and author of the firefighting textbook for buildings that they all use. And he wrote this article in the International Fire Safety Journal about Building 7 because he became aware through our work at AE 9/11 Truth and Richard Gage 9/11 and others, particularly Paul Cayley, the filmmaker of Calling Out Bravo 7. So, and Eric Lawyer, firefighter, who worked with Raul for years trying to convince him that, hey, you should look into this Building 7, this third tower that came down on 9/11, straight down, by the way, uniformly, symmetrically into its own footprint in under 7 seconds. So, yes, Raul Angulo got involved. He came with us to the National Fire Protection Association conference, 2 of them, and sat with us at our evidence booth showing Building 7 coming down on the screen, a huge lot of evidence, and he was convincing firefighters left and right. And one of those guys was Duncan, the editor of the Fire Safety Journal, right across from us. He invited Raul to write an article. He did. Curt Weldon saw it. And then Tucker interviewed him. And now Tucker's going to be interviewing more people because he's going to be doing a multi-part series, documentary series on 9/11. Did you hear that, guys? I mean, I'm going, clear out my ears. What did he say? He just kind of threw it out there. We didn't know about this, but we anticipate that we're going to be involved in that effort. And so, we're pulling out all the stops to make sure that Tucker, if Curt hasn't already, named the authors of that document over your shoulder there, hopefully he's introduced to Tucker these authors and that evidence. Hopefully Tucker read that evidence, because we'll tell you later what he'll find in that document if he actually reads it.
It's amazing that Tucker has been willing to do this, because I remember famously Stephen Jones going on one of his shows back in the day, and Tucker was very skeptical of the position, but also there was an issue where Stephen Jones asked Tucker to roll a footage of Building 7 coming down. It sent it to him previously, and for whatever reason it didn't play, and I don't know what happened there, but Tucker has done a complete 180 on this issue, and it is an amazing service that he's not just doing to us. I mean, we're doing this for the people that died on that day, right? It helps us accomplish that mission, but it's really for the country, for the people that continue to mourn those lives lost. And this is a clear example of somebody stepping forward and putting the past behind them, even their past statements, and just, doing what is right for this country, using his platform to do so. Kamal, same question to you. Obviously, you watched the Tucker interview with Curt Weldon. What's your reaction?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm so delighted to have Richard with us today. It's such a pleasure to see you. regarding the interview, I think Richard articulated it very, very, very well. I can't do it better than that. However, I enjoyed watching it for sure. I thought it started a little slow. I was a little frustrated with the beginning of it because he was kind of more or less covering the official story a little bit, and then the commission and then, but he went into the meat of the matter later on. I just love his passion. His passion is really just very contagious, and I think that's his anger, his passion is really what is promoting or actually propelling people like Tucker and others to get excited about this as well, to see that here's a person who has been disparaged over the years and who was essentially a very prominent person, and he was just really trashed in the political circles, and now he's coming back and doing just basically pushing that story and being so dedicated, which is really wonderful. I did not expect someone like that to pick it up and be so passionate about it and make it his life's work right now. It's his mission.
Yeah. And I mean, it touched him personally. He talks every interview about what happened to his daughter. That would piss me off too. And it was all to target him. So he suffered for just simply asking questions about September 11th, questions that should have been getting asked by our entire Congress, should have been getting asked within the first few years of September 11th happening. The revelations that bin Laden was taken to Iran, hid there, while our soldiers are going into Afghanistan and getting shot at, losing limbs, losing their lives. This is a national scandal all by itself. You don't even need an architect or an engineer to reinvestigate September 11th, to open the whole thing up. Just look at that one fact, and that's way out of our scope. But damn, that is a terrible bit of news to hear. But it's a great that it is coming out, and there's even more that got revealed in this Tucker interview, folks. If you have not watched this yet, it's all over the place. If you got friends who are 9/11 truthers, you've seen this video come up on your newsfeed, I guarantee you. But take the time, the 40 or so minutes that this takes place, take the time to watch it. I sent this interview to people in my family who aren't even involved in 9/11 truth. They know what I'm doing. I said, you got to listen to this. I don't care that you're liberal or that you don't like Trump or Tucker Carlson. Put that aside. Listen to the information coming out in this interview. And of course, they touch upon the controlled demolition evidence too. Richard, obviously that part of it, and it's very nicely marked too at the bottom of the YouTube video where they tell you what they're talking about at various times, but there is a section where they're talking about Building 7 and they're talking about controlled demolition. And even though Weldon is not an expert on that, he knows enough to be able to say there's a problem there. What did you think of that section of the Tucker interview?
Well, I would like to hope that each of these gentlemen has actually read the document that you and I and Kamal and Craig and so many others have put so much work into, where we actually highlight all the key points of evidence that will back up their claims, essentially, that 9/11 was an inside job. More importantly, that these 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers were demolished in a controlled demolition. All the proof is right in front of Tucker as he's interviewing Weldon. Did he read it? I don't know. If he did, he would find that there's evidence of free fall acceleration. Kamal will explain that. What does that mean? For at least a third of this building's 7-second fall, not one of those 80 columns gave any resistance at all for at least 8 stories or 100 feet of free fall. That's as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. Now, the bowling ball has no resistance under it, so it can fall that fast. But this building has thousands of tons of structural steel under it. Kamal, I just want you to comment on this as a structural engineer.
Well,
What kind of sense does that make to you?
it does not make any sense at all. The study that we did, that AE put together with Leroy Holsey of University of Alaska, Richard, and you remember that very well as well. That really proved that there's no way for this building to come down the way it actually did without removing all the columns around 8 stories high. Remember we had that discussion at one point? I couldn't believe that it took that many stories to be actually columns to be disintegrated or to be severed in order for the building to fall at free fall speed like that. Yes, I mean, that's it is engineers, if they still believe the official story, they should be baffled by that. But I don't think many people do. Many people who are in this business, engineers, architects, do still believe the official story. But what I'd like to see is actually have more people step forward. And now with this momentum building up, hopefully we'll get more people stepping forward and questioning and talking about it, at least having the discussion.
And Kamal is featured as one of a few structural engineers in our upcoming episode 3 of the docuseries 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom. So he goes into great detail explaining why a building can't fall at free fall without, as you just mentioned, Kamal, those columns disintegrating. How do you disappear 80 columns on 8 different floors, all of them essentially at once? Well, the evidence in the 9/11, the Presidential Commission report on the Presidential Commission on 9/11 report that we created documents not only the free fall, of course, but what could have caused that. We have evidence of molten iron, the byproduct of thermite. Thermite, an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. And that evidence is not only in the molten metal seen by structural engineers, including Leslie Robertson, structural engineer of the Twin Towers, many first responders who saw molten lava, they called it. They didn't know what else to call it, flowing down the channel rails. Well, that takes 3,000 degrees. Hey, that's 3 times hotter than most office fires ever get to. And that much hotter than jet fuel can ever get to. So we have the evidence not only there, but throughout all the World Trade Center dust. And in this document, you'll find a section, for instance, on previously molten iron microspheres about the diameter of a human hair. Well, my God, where did they come from? There's billions of them. The U.S. Geological Survey documents it. R.J. Lee Group documents it independently. The EPA says this is a signature element of the World Trade Center dust, but they don't know where they came from. Well, where do molten iron microspheres come from? They come from the ignition of thermite. And under explosive conditions, that creates aerosolized liquid molten iron. It's the only possible explanation for all of these previously liquid molten iron microspheres. So we not only have that, we have the chemical evidence, the chemical analysis of these, and they are elemental iron, the byproduct of thermite. What's the other byproduct of thermite? Aluminum oxide ash. So we show in this document that all of the freely flying structural steel sections ejected laterally out of the Twin Towers at 80 miles an hour, clocked by physicists, landing 600 feet in every direction, trailed by thick white smoke clouds. Kamal, is steel flammable under office fire conditions?
Steel is non-combustible. That's how the architectural engineering term It
Yeah.
is not flammable. It does weaken under temperature, but it doesn't disintegrate, and it doesn't melt.
Then what's
like
trailing? What do you think? I know you know. What is let's quiz Andy and Craig. What do you guys think is trailing thick white smoke clouds behind all of these laterally ejected structural steel sections weighing 4 to 8 tons, impaling themselves in skyscrapers all around the World Trade Center?
Well, I don't know. Could it possibly be a gravitational collapse, or could it involve something called thermite? I'm being facetious, of course. The evidence is clear. We've done this for so long that at this point, it's almost like we can just, recite this off the top of our heads. And all we have to do is get some kind of breakthrough like this. I'm going to let Craig answer that, but it's just amazing that we've had to go this long for this kind of opportunity.
Yeah, it's I was just going to say about the you took care of the thermite part, but one of the things that resonated with me, and I think I got this from you, Richard, was the whole idea of the steel columns weighing several tons each being blown up and out for 600 or more feet. That, to me, that's an image that really can only point in one direction. You can't, there's no way gravity throws steel columns 2 football fields away. So, and I like the 2 football fields away too, because that's also very, that really works on a visual, makes you think of what it would look like. So I hope that as we, get more exposure, that we can get those things across even more. Because Building 7 is great because it makes people think, wait a minute, something's wrong here. But, there's always some people will always say, well, that one wasn't, that when it was hit by debris or something. So it's not just one tower that's anomalous, it's 3. So I think we're just kind of at the beginning of introducing the rest of the world to that fact.
Yeah. And I was just shocked to hear, sorry, Andy, but did you hear Tucker say explosions? You mean
yes,
they're witnesses of explosions there?
Yeah.
Well, Tucker,
Do we have that on
thank you for
tape?
coming to the party. What?
No, I just said Tucker said to her, do we know that for sure?
Yeah, right.
Well, let me answer that question here. Hold on. I'm going to answer that question for 2 minutes. 1 second.
What happened?
It was an explosion. We was in the lobby and then the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the planet probably?
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. Because we was inside waiting to go upstairs. And on the way upstairs, the whole fucking plane blew. And we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second it was terrible. Then there was a third one too after that one.
Third explosion after that?
That's right. Everybody was inside the building waiting to go upstairs. And they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was a plane or whatever hit the building, then a secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. And they exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
And it was just mayhem after that?
Just man, everybody tried to work their way out.
Just trying to help all the brothers get out.
A lot of people trapped inside and everything.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings could blow up. This ain't done yet.
How does this? What do we do?
We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Just ran up west. And then
Yeah, here's one of the guys who can tell you I'm okay, all right? Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something?
You gotta get back something. You know that. You gotta get back.
All right. Don't worry about me. You need to make calls right now. All right.
All right. So yes, there's people on tape.
People on tape. Andy, there's 156 first responders orally recorded on tape by the the fire commissioner. And this was just a month after 9/11, but the city withheld all that information till August of 2005, when they had to release it by court order above them. And the New York Times actually put these, and they're there now on their website. Graham McQueen dug through, read 12,000 pages of testimony. He found 156 of these first responders talking about explosions, hearing explosions, seeing explosions, feeling explosions, being blown around the building by explosions, many of them before the towers ever collapsed.
The evidence is overwhelming in this case, and we've deserved to have this kind of coverage, and we need to have even more of it. Part of the issue, of course, is that Weldon is getting all of this attention because of his stature as a former member of Congress. But the information that Richard is talking about right now, and Kamal, really needs to be presented to a wider audience. It's almost like, Richard went on tours back in the day. He netted in whoever might be interested in coming across this information. People may be susceptible to listening to alternative points of view about historical events, but you have your John Q. Public people who are into more mainstream politics. They got an opportunity to listen to Weldon talk to this today, or this week rather, but they need to hear it in more in depth, because yes, we saw that part of the interview where Tucker is fascinated about the explosions, the firefighters hearing the explosions, the reports of them there, and we really need to have people from our side of it go into more depth with it, just like Richard can do in a snap of the fingers. I want to hear from, and I want Craig to chime in on this, but I want to hear from Richard and Kamal as well. But do you think that the mainstream media can ignore this for much longer? And what I mean is, if Trump shows an interest in doing this, if Weldon or any member of our team gets more big interviews and these things go viral, how long can the media pretend this isn't going on and just focus on Katy Perry holding a flower in space? Because it just is very, very creepy to see the media trying to pretend that it's business as usual.
Right. Do you want me to take that one first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Andy, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've actually been enjoying the Katy Perry coverage in the last couple of days. I particularly like the part where they accidentally opened the door a little too soon, and then they said, no, close it. Because, Jeff Bezos had to get in there with his special crank to open the door, which anyway, so it's the mainstream media still has its uses, I would say. But, the thing about this is, it may be very, very difficult, even with this coverage that's happening, to get this subject on CNN or on a network. But what's interesting about that is that those media outlets are becoming less important as time goes on. If this gets on Joe Rogan, that's going to be massive. More people watch Joe Rogan than watch CNN. So that's why, it's kind of like, if we have to go around the mainstream media, then we go around them, and then maybe eventually they have no choice. It's just kind of, I don't know how that'll go, but it just seems like there's an atmosphere that didn't used to exist where alternative media, if you want to call them that, have a lot more clout than they had even 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, I remember the day that Trump got shot at. I found out about it when I was buying sushi. I come home and I wanted to get live coverage of it. And that's the only advantage that the corporate media still has. They can be Johnny on the spot with things and to provide their propaganda. And I had to sit and watch those people for about 24 hours, not consecutively, but I forgot what it was like to watch the mainstream media, to see actors and models presenting news to me, trying to give their own spin. And I actually felt sick by the end of the day just from the exposure exposure, like it's radiation or something. Because I'm so used to getting news from, the few podcasts I like or internet news, and I haven't watched corporate media all that much in a few years. Richard, I know you're not a media commentary person. You don't probably analyze it very deeply, but your thoughts on that. How long can NBC, CBS, ABC pretend this isn't going on, especially if Trump says, you know what, I want to do this presidential commission. I'm impressed with that document right there.
Yeah, they're going to be forced to acknowledge reality. This happens. They had to acknowledge, although backhandedly, gain of function regarding the disease that they engineered and the false solution to it. They had to kind of come around and acknowledge some of that, albeit after so many people were harmed. But here, they haven't had us on TV since 2014. I think Geraldo Rivera had Tony Zamboni and a family member, Bob McIlvaine, and that was extraordinary. He actually said, "Oh my God, you guys got something here. These 1,300 architects and engineers must know something, but not a squeak after that reveal, and not a squeak from C-SPAN, whom you gathered a whole troop of people to essentially plague C-SPAN with questions about Building 7 until they say, well, we better get him on, I guess. So, yeah, we went on to C-SPAN with an interview, and I explained all this evidence in 45 minutes. And guess what? It became their top video on their entire C-SPAN website, exceeding Obama, who was very popular at the time. We had over 1 million views. Did we get a follow-up, Andy?
No, they wanted to sort of forgot. In fact, what they did is a couple of days later, I guess it's their way of providing balance, is they had some random guy talking about conspiracy theories, how dangerous we are. I probably got 300 views on the website. Nobody cared. But, that was sort of the responses to say, well, all the scientific evidence that we just sat through for 40 minutes blew everybody away. Now here's some random guy to say that conspiracy theories are dangerous. That was the response that we got.
Go back to sleep, everybody. You didn't hear that.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to play another clip from the Tucker Carlson interview, and this is definitely pertinent to what we do here in the 9/11 Truth Movement.
Like a lot of people have said, many credible, non-crazy people have said that was controlled demolition. Was it?
Well, when I got up there the day after, I had been in the Trade Center at the restaurant on the top several times. There's no way those two buildings could have collapsed into what they were there. Something had to happen.
Was that obvious to you immediately?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and they were looking for other firefighters like Ray Downey and the 342 others that were trapped and eventually vaporized. So something happened. Whether there's a high explosive material, I think it's called fermite, that is used to explode metal and steel and vaporize it. Those tests were never done on that. There were some limited tests that found that there was some evidence of that, but the whole thing never was subjected to the kind of investigation that would be warranted when 3,000 people die. I mean, when you have 3,000 people die, you would think it would be a full massive investigation, not going after 9/11, obviously, but what happened to the buildings and why'd they come down? They're the only high-rise buildings in the world that have ever come down from an airplane hitting them. And those buildings, I read the report from the architect who designed them. They were designed to withstand an airplane hitting the building and standing tall.
They're the only buildings that have ever collapsed due to fires. Normal office fires have never in history brought down a steel frame fire protected structure ever. And that's the point he should have been making. And we make that point in this document that he held up in front of 6 million, 7 million now viewers. And yet it's all in here. And all we need to do next time is get Curt to walk people through the different sections, the evidence for explosions, the evidence for the pulverization of 90,000 tons of concrete, which, by the way, is pulverized in midair. It's not stacked up in 110 pancakes at the bottom of each of these towers. Where did it go? It went laterally, again, through all of Manhattan in a 3 square mile area, a blanket 3 inches thick. 30% of that is concrete. That's where the concrete floors were. Well, if that's where the concrete floors were, and if 600 feet is the diameter of the debris pile of steel outside the footprint of the building, then it wasn't this weight of the steel, and it wasn't the weight of the concrete that crushed those buildings. No, we see what took those buildings apart floor by floor, just like those first responders described, pop, 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 all around the building, like explosions going all around the 4 faces of the building. We list all of these quotes, and the document can reveal all of this information and so much more. If we can get Curt, our hero, Weldon, to actually not only read the document, but cite at least the headlines of the document publicly on his next interview, and get Tucker to read it, then he'll go say, oh my God, this is real stuff here. We've got to get this out into our multi-series documentary that we're going to make on 9/11. That's what he said. So maybe we'll get our day, Kamal, and we'll be able to explain all this to people.
Well, most definitely. It's the momentum is building. We can feel it building right now, and it's been many, many years it took for this to happen, to start happening. And let's hope it continues and actually explodes, so to speak, into the media. Regarding the media, I mean, Craig nailed it. I think just the mainstream media is becoming more and more irrelevant, and people, especially younger people, the next generation, are more interested in podcasts and more interested in getting their information online, as opposed to very few people now get their information, I think, in general, very informed people get their information from the media. There's no information on the media, on the mainstream media anyway. It's just sales and selling products. But maybe at some point when this becomes so sensational and so exciting that this is explosive evidence and situation is coming to the forefront, maybe to start picking it up, maybe to start something would happen then as far as that goes.
Yeah. Can I add something there?
Go ahead.
I just want to make a point that that this kind of new interest in 9/11 in the alternative media is actually predates Weldon. If you look, over the last couple of years, we've seen some pretty people with very large audiences start to openly talk about 9/11. I mean, Tucker Carlson did make reference to it months ago. I can't remember what he said exactly, but Candace Owens, who has got a very large audience, she's a podcaster. She openly questions it. We had people on our conference last September, our anniversary conference. Alex Stein and people. There were a whole bunch of people, including Jill Stein, who was running for president. So it's interesting that it's almost like the timing is perfect, because people were already starting to feel it was safe to talk about this. And I think for a long time, people who were had audiences, and the Jimmy Dore, we mustn't forget Jimmy Dore. His interview with Leroy Halsey really, helped to kind of push this forward. But at one time, those people would have been hesitant to talk about this because they would have been afraid that they'll be called, a kook or whatever, and they'll lose their audience. But it seems like now it's safe for these podcasters and media people to start talking about it. And that's a really good sign. And also, I think what that leads to is that label that is always thrown at all of us, that we're all conspiracy theorists. I sense that is losing its power in the last year or two. That when you get very popular people like Tucker Carlson openly questioning 9/11, that the accusation, oh, well, that's just a conspiracy theorist, it just seems very weak now. And I think it's losing its power.
I think that if you are not called a conspiracy theorist at this point, it means that you just, your intelligence level is pretty low. And we know how often they use that. I mean, it was getting to a point where if you smelled gas and wanted to call the gas company to make sure you don't have a gas leak, you're a conspiracy theorist. So, no, you absolutely have to question everything in this world. And it's amazing to see what is going on here. The one problem, though, and I see this is just happening, and it happens in everybody, is we've had a lot of people who've been very involved for a very long time, and they're tired. It's a 15-round fight. I know boxing has 12 rounds now, but back in the day they were 15. But it's a 15-round fight, and we're like in the 14th round of this. And, we're kind of beaten and battered, a lot of us, and we just sort of want to lay down and take a nap at this point because, we've been through it all. And I just want to know, Richard, is now the time to lay down on the mat and take a nap for our supporters?
Nope. You can tell that I get some of my energy from Curt Weldon, and it's never going to die. I'm going to, if Tucker calls us for an interview, he's going to hear about thermite discovered in the World Trade Center dust samples, all of them that this 8-member team of international scientists analyze and discover. They thought they were paint, these little red-gray chips, red on one side, gray on the other. But they're not. They're attracted to a magnet. Paint is not. It looked like primer paint, but it's dual layered, red and gray. So what do they find when they actually do chemical analysis with XEDS? They find iron oxide, which is ingredient of thermite, and aluminum, the other ingredient of thermite. And this at the nano scale, 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. And so they go, whoa. What is this stuff? They do research. They find, hey, this was discovered by Lawrence Livermore Lab about 25 years ago and documented in the peer-reviewed literature. They go, interesting. Well, what did they do? Well, they put it in a heater, these little chips they had at Lawrence Livermore. They ignite. They produce a lot of energy, proving that they're active thermitic materials. This is not paint. Paint doesn't have these exotic properties. What do they release when they are ignited? Molten iron microspheres with the same chemical signature as the molten iron microspheres produced when in the dust that R.J. Lee and U.S. Geological Survey analyzed. So we know exactly where those previously molten iron microspheres came from. They came from these chips of nanothermite. There's about 4 tons of this material left over unignited in the World Trade Center dust. You can tell by extrapolation. So this is all documented and has been since 2009 in the peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal. We've had this information, Tucker. I don't know where you've been or what rock you're hiding under, but we're awfully glad you're coming out now and apologizing for shaming David Ray Griffin and Stephen Jones, who tried to tell you about this, as Andy mentioned, in 2006.
That's right. And we're happy to have him as an ally, and we're happy to have anybody that has any kind of stories that's coming out. Just getting a little bit of an echo there, but we're happy to talk to anybody, even if they're people who viciously attacked us many years ago. I don't care. I don't care about all of that. All right. The past is the past. Just speak out now. Let's get this over the hump. And for our supporters who might be tired, let's say, oh my God, I don't know if I can go on with this. I don't know if I can keep on supporting AE 9/11 Truth or Richard Gage 911. I just, I'm 9/11'd out. Stick with us a little bit longer. We're going to have some exciting things that we're going to be announcing this week. This is the tease. This is the tease, guys. All right. But later on in the week, we're going to be doing some things with our founder here. and doing some collective work to try to get this message out, get this information out so that, you know, when the talk of explosions comes up, if a host says explosions, we can elaborate. We can give them all the information that they can handle about this topic. And God, we've been at this for so long here. Richard has, from founding the organization, and I always forget if it's 2007 or 2008. I should know that. I've been here so long. But you know, going out and taking those first steps, and you know, I mean, I can't imagine, Richard, that you would have, you know, known how far this would go for you when you did your first presentation. I'm going to get a little bit sentimental here, Richard. I'm going to get a little bit sentimental with you here, because I have this rare distinction in the 9/11 Truth movement. All right. A lot of people have come through AE. A lot of people made that decision to sign up and volunteer here. I am the only person in the history of AE who accidentally got hit the moment he signed up with AE, caught on camera by my video camera. So you're in the foreground. We're going to play this here, and I just want to sort of get your reaction here. Here it is.
Some of them are good questions. Most of them will just simply call us conspiracy theorists. But there's on every slide they'll have something different to say. So you ask me one of the questions you think they might come up with, and I'll give you our best answer.
I don't know. They might ask you about the plane that crashed in where was it, Pennsylvania?
What about the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania? Okay, and I'll say, I don't know. I'm an architect. I'm looking at these high-rise buildings. That's what really concerns me. We have evidence of molten metal, microspheres, explosives in the dust, free-fall acceleration of buildings, lateral ejection, pulverized concrete, no floors found. What's your next question? That's what I tell them.
Pennsylvania, go to our website. That was
we look a lot different now, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we're older, we're wiser. But we had the right answers back then. They try to get us off, Andy, into these other areas, which many feel are as important as the evidence, but I don't. Obviously, you just saw by my answer. I always go back to the forensic scientific evidence for which it's irrefutable and overwhelming, the amount of it we have. Yeah, there was a plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, and yeah, people have a whole lot of questions about it, but that's outside the scope of our research and our credibility. Yeah, maybe the Israelis were involved, but that's outside the scope of our research and credibility. Yeah, there was other things going on at the Pentagon, but that is outside the scope of our research as well. So as architects and engineers who are focused on the World Trade Center 7 and the Twin Towers, I'm telling you, we've got enough evidence there to bring down the deep state. And if we dilute it, we are going to pay the price, because they're going to attack all of these other points suggesting that we have a political agenda. You know, so no, we don't have a political agenda. We have a truth agenda. And that truth agenda, by the way, involves foreknowledge of the collapse of this building. If people are going to get together and take down 3 buildings, well, people would know about it in advance, right? Well, none of that came out in the 9/11 Commission report. No, they didn't even mention the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7, the third worst structural failure in modern history. But why then do we have these mysterious construction workers walking away from Building 7 in the late in the afternoon of 9/11, hearing an explosion over their shoulder, looking back at the building, and then looking straight into the CNN camera and saying this? You hear that? That building's coming down. The building's going to blow up. Flame and debris coming down. Well, how the hell do they know that the building's going to blow up? The firefighters were told the building's going to come down for the first time ever due to fire. So they're all back at this restaurant waiting for orders when they could have easily put out a few small scattered fires in Building 7. But they were told, no, it's going to come down on its own. In fact, the BBC announced the collapse of this building 20 minutes before it ever happened. They apologized for that grievous error, citing the confusing events of the day. What, does that make them psychic? You know, what's really going on here? It goes on and on and on, the evidence. And by the way, you can see all this evidence at ae911truth.org. Just start hunting and pecking for evidence. You'll see more than you ever wanted to.
That's right. Well, it was an unprecedented event, Richard, so that's why they were able to predict it 20 minutes in advance or earlier on in the morning, because as this says, nothing like this has ever happened before or since, but we were able to predict it. So a lot of loss of logic, and a lot of people try to get us diverted. But whatever you said during that presentation, this was obviously the question and answer session. I must have been really impressed because you can see me back there with the arrow pointing at me, signing up, and I guess that's when I joined.
Oh, that's when you signed up, yeah.
That's when I signed up, right there. So
and Andy's he's volunteered for 10 years before he ever was paid initially a small stipend, and a little bit more than that now, maybe, to run the entire organization, AE 911 Truth, which we all started together. Kamal goes way back to what, 2009?
I want to just harken back to the time that I met you, Richard. I first heard you on KPFA. With Bonnie Faulkner, I believe. What was back in 2005, 2006 or so?
Whoa. Wow.
It was right around then. And then there was a festival. I don't know if you remember that one in San Francisco at Golden Gate Park at the fields down where they had all these booths and music. And it was just a wonderful, activists coming together. And you had a booth there. And I walked in. It was 2006, I believe. And we started talking, and then we picked it up from there. We did the BBC show together in 2008.
Yeah, we were on TV. Kamal's an actor. He's a structural engineer, but he's famous now.
Oh yeah, right. And
yeah. For those of you who don't know, Kamal Obeid is a forensic structural engineer in the San Francisco Bay Area who specializes in structural failures. He's done earthquake analysis for the Northridge all the way down there, and for steel and concrete structures. He's really he's understated.
Well, thank you, Richard.
We have to put his
very important credentials there. And you can see his diplomas right there behind him. I've got a bunch of flashing lights. I always say welcome to Vegas when people come on the show. But some amazing credentials that Kamal has. And, of course, Richard, too. We literally have the A and the E right here on the screen, right on top of each other. So, folks, a lot of exciting things are going to be going on here at AE 911 Truth and Richard Gage 911. Stick with us. We're going to be taking this evidence and moving it forward, getting even more media attention on this, and helping Curt Weldon get us into the end zone with this, so we can say good job all around, call it a day, and make the world a better place, make America a better place, make America great again with 911 Truth. Richard, Kamal, and of course, Craig, thank you for coming on 911 Free Fall today.
The band is back together.
That's awesome.
Hit that notification bell and slam the like button and subscribe. Thanks.